Hi there, my name's Paul from Arkus Games. Welcome to this video. This is the first video in our Shadow Moon Syndicates development diaries. A little bit of an experiment for us. We thought we've had a lot of help over the years when it comes to making board games from some very generous people with their time. And we thought it was a nice idea if we paid it forward and started sharing some of our experience in making games. And so this particular video is going to focus on more of the creative development side of things, which is more what I do in the company, and is the work of myself and my guest designer, Dane Madgwick, who also obviously helped us out on Storm Raiders as well. And so this first, I guess, where do you start? So really, at this stage, we'd already played Jay's game a couple of times, and we'd obviously made the decision that we wanted to make it. And so the next step for us, as the gameplay was already significantly advanced, was to start to focus on the world that the game is going to be set in and the genre. And the process that we go through at Arkus is very similar to the same process we go through when I'm working on film jobs, and Dane as well. We're both concept designers from the film industry and video game. So we're kind of pretending effectively that this is the same process as if we were making a very big world for a very big movie. But obviously we're just going to shortcut the process a little bit because we're just going to use, I guess, develop the bits of it that we need to primarily support gameplay for the board game. But of course, if we do our job right, who knows in the future, if we were very fortunate, it might become something other than a board game, which is one of the reasons why we like to take our time to actually get some of the sort of foundational concept and world building down, and make sure that we, sort of get the logic of it working, which is important because that's going to really help when it comes to developing the artwork and the graphic design for the game as we progress. So this is going to look a little bit, it's not going to look particularly sexy in terms of, sort of splashy, cool looking art, because very much like a game designer, this stage is very much more like a paper prototype. We're talking about planning at this stage. And if I just zoom out a little bit here, this gives you an idea. This is a software program called Miro, which I've been using now for a few years. It's an amazing piece of software because it's effectively a gigantic digital whiteboard where you can where you can pin up information, comment, and mood board. And the biggest advantage with it is that you can fit so much different kinds of information in one location and then just sort of move around it, which for a world builder like myself and Dane is really helpful because we like to be able to holistically see how different elements are working together. And so this enables us to get a very good overview from a long distance away, as it were, over how the game is developing. And at this stage, it's very wireframe. We're maybe getting we're getting some ideas around the UI design, just getting a little bit of reference. We might be looking at some artists we like, including ourselves in terms of the style of art. It could even be as simple as just breaking down what the board game is going to be made up of. How many cards, what are the objectives, what are the componentry. But the example I'm going to focus on more is the factions, because that's a very big part of the game. And obviously with the factions, we needed to make sure that each faction had a sort of signature origin story, design, look, and attitude, and that they needed to complement the work that Jay has done from a development perspective, from the games side of things. And so, as you can see, if we go right in close, this is kind of how we work. You've got Jay's original description up here, because he blocked out some ideas thematically for each one of the factions. Myself and Dane would do a quick bit of brainstorming on a post-it note, and then with Dane, we would write that up into something that makes a little bit more sense, combining some of the elements of what we liked from Jay's ideas, So we had sort of something that was a little bit more cohesive, and then we started having a bit of fun just finding some really cool imagery that sort of sparks some of the ideas that we want to pursue visually. Some of this is just tonal, some of it is thematic, and some of it is very much an art style that we might want to pursue. And also, it's giving us some really good information on how we might set design briefs later to other artists, including ourselves, on sort of moving forward with the artwork. Because there's obviously going to be a lot of artwork, card artwork for this game. And you can see that we did that for all of the factions. I'm not going to go into detail on all of them because this is more about process, but you can see that our next round of iteration, we're starting to get a better understanding after going through that first phase with all of the factions. We're starting to get a better understanding of the different elements that we're going to need to design for these factions. Some of it not just included in gameplay, but maybe even something that we might need for marketing purposes, and also just part of what we want in the world, irrespective of the game. So you can see we're starting to think about a unique number, a tagline. We need to think about their location, their home sector, color key. We need a symbol or an icon for them. We're thinking about their game thematic, but we're also thinking about the general sort of like, I don't know, backstory, origin story kind of piece of text that we might end up using later. This is all pretty rough, and we do a lot of refinement as we go, but this is just to show you the process. And then you can see we're starting to make more complicated boards now that help us make sense of all the imagery that we're finding, and sort of placing them in places that's a bit more useful. Like we're thinking about prop and tech. We're starting to think about tone and attitude, and terminology even. So this is kind of the next evolution in our world building sort of process. And then from here, and we spent quite a bit of time in this space, resolving it. But then Dane decided this board was getting too big and unwieldy, and so he wanted to start a new board and make spend a bit more time design wise as well. And so this is the new board, and you can see how massive they get. That's everything on this board. But then if we go right on in, it's like that scene in Blade Runner when they're punching in on the photo. That is how many images one tiny section of the board has. This is some of our license-free photo reference that we were finding, which we could use without copyright infringement for our game. So if we just go back up to the factions again, we'll be able to sort of see the next evolution in our development. So if we go back through to Feral, which is the faction we were just looking at, you can sort of see that Dane had already started to take some of that information from the previous round and start to do more of a graphic design pass on it. And this is a really important part of the process for us now, because we're starting to think about what the game's going to look like the componentry, the box, the rule book. And this kind of level of graphic design is really helpful in terms of starting to resolve that. And as you can see, and this actually finds its way into the next stage of the process, which is the next video, which I won't cover off now. And then you can sort of see we're starting to take that same information, but we're just starting to do more of a graphic design pass on it and refine it further. And part of it is as these boards evolve over months. So when we first started this board, there was nothing in this section. But after starting to illustrate this faction, we started putting the roughs into here so that we could sort of start to see how they were looking as a lineup. And you can see some of them are just reference at this stage, and others are kind of like a first pass illustration. So you can sort of see how much information we're sort of looking at getting. And we don't just use it for developing the factions, we're also using the boards to develop, for example, componentry like the game board. So you can sort of see here's Jay's original prototype for the game board. We've got it there to be able to reference. And then this is me working with Dane on some of the game board ideas. And again, the reason for putting this into the Miro board is that anyone from the team can just jump in and look at where we're at and see how things are progressing. And we can see at a glance which ones we feel are working better than others. And you don't get that if they're all filed separately in different places. Anyway, I'm going to stop this video here because obviously the main goal of this was just to sort of keep it fairly short. But the next video is going to be talking about the next stage, which is more about bringing this information together into a primer or kind of like a world pitch document. Okay, so thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this video, let me know. And obviously, please check out our website. And if you're interested in following the game and maybe purchasing the game, we're launching late October on Kickstarter. Check the links below. And thanks for listening.